Wreck-It Ralph was a masterpiece. Everyone loved it, but then Ralph Breaks the Internet came out and everyone kind of hated it, which is interesting because it has roughly the same reviews as Wreck-It Ralph on IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, and Common Sense Media, but the fans hated it.
This movie sucks!
So let's see if it actually sucks or if it's overhated. So the movie starts back at the arcade and we see Ralph and Vanellope just chilling, being friends. We watch them yap in the power strip, going to Tappers to get some root beer, and playing some Tron, which has a virus that makes them get stuck. We also see them chilling in a football game. Then we finally get to the main conflict of this movie. While Ralph and Vanellope are in the football game, Vanellope has a midlife crisis and is becoming self-aware and is wondering if there's more to life than this. I'm gonna be very picky to understand the hatred, so bear with me. One thing that stands out to me is that since the first movie, it's been 6 whole years, and we didn't really see them go into any new, unique, or fun games. You're gonna tell me in 6 years, Mr. Loback has not added any dope arcade machines? I mean, Tron is iconic and is foreshadowing for later in the movie, so I guess that's cool, but it has a virus so they can't enjoy it. It seems like they really tried on purpose to make the arcade look as boring as possible. This will be a common occurrence throughout the movie, and I feel a lot of things are forced to drive the plot of Vanellope hating the arcade and wanting to be in a new game. For example, after the Wi-Fi gets plugged in, Vanellope and Ralph have a silly argument that's not even really an argument, so pretty much Vanellope asks Ralph if he wishes something new would happen in his game, and he's like, nope, and she says,
agree to disagree.
And he gets insecure and thinks that they're fighting, and so he decides to go into her game and create a new track by wrecking her game, and Vanellope gets happy, and even though she is being controlled by a human, she just decides to do her own thing and fight against the human controlling her, which she could have just waited till the human was gone. But anyways, because of this, the wheel breaks, and honestly through this race, it seemed like Vanellope was having fun and being all competitive, but I guess she hates her game. I don't know. But Mr. Lubac tries to just jam the wheel back in place instead of getting a professional to fix it, and then he can't afford to buy a new wheel, which just seems silly, I'm not gonna lie. Also, what is odd about this scene is that Ralph is just peeking through the machine, and Mr. Lubac doesn't even bat an eye, so he puts an out of order sign on Sugar Rush. And Vanellope is sad about this, even though she was literally saying how boring her game was. Weird. Also, we get a glimpse to how obsessed Ralph is with Vanellope when he thinks that she has the perfect life now, because she doesn't have to work and can just hang out with him all the time now. But Vanellope is sad, so they decide to go into the internet to buy the wheel off eBay. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this whole sequence felt rushed, but I understand it. Making a second Wreck-It Ralph movie was kind of a Hail Mary and probably kind of a cash grab to piggyback off the success of the first movie, but it makes sense why they added the internet. Another movie in the same arcade would have been kind of lame, as they already did that and perfected it in the first movie. So honestly, going to the internet was the only thing to make this movie slightly different and unique, but the conflict is just kind of whack. And like I said, it feels forced. It's hard to understand why Vanellope of all people is bored of her game. This girl was literally an outcast and lived in a mountain and seemed pretty happy with that life, but now is free and allowed to go into other games and actually race, and now she's bored? I mean, Ralph has been playing Fix It Felix for like triple her lifespan and he's not bored. So it's kind of odd that Vanellope is bored, but not one other person from this arcade is. I get it. Gotta get to the internet somehow. Also, we see that Felix and Calhoun adopted the kids from Sugar Rush, and boy, they really messed up with this. This could have been such a good B plot to watch, but instead, once Ralph and Vanellope enter the internet, the only A and B plot we get is just them. What made Wreck-It Ralph so good was that there was so much going on. You had Felix trying to save Ralph, Ralph going on his own adventure, we saw a lot of the arcade problems, have Vanellope's little plot, and even King Candy being a villain. Just so many things happening. Anyways, Ralph and Vanellope finally enter the internet, and I'm not even gonna lie, I really enjoyed the internet. Seeing the internet as a world was so insanely cool. They did a really good job with it. The references as well were amazing. The writers really showed how creative they are. As we see, Google was a little smart human, websites are actual little worlds, spammers are actual self-aware NPCs holding up pop-up ads, and when you're going to another website, you're actually traveling in a little car to the next place. It's honestly really cool and kind of makes you see the internet differently. Speaking of traveling to other planets, we get to eBay, and here's where the movie kind of does more of that forcing a conflict. So Ralph and Vanellope get to the bidding of a steering wheel and have absolutely no idea what they are doing, and because of this, they take a $275 wheel and start spitting out insanely huge numbers, and what could have probably been like a $400 to $500 wheel became $27,001. But I won't lie, this scene is pretty funny and it makes sense why they did it, because with a simple price of $500, this movie would have been really short, but they realized they now have to come up with $27,001, and they start bugging, and Ralph throws a sign at a random person, which turns out to be Miranda Sings, and this did not age well at all. Like I said though, it still is cool to imagine us humans being in this cool little world when on the computer. Ralph and Vanellope go to that spam dude who said they can make money playing games and find out if they steal Shank's car from a game called Slaughter Race, they could get 40 grand and easily get that steering wheel. This game is practically GTA, and one thing I really liked about this game was the actual players and how they move. It was genuinely hilarious. It reminds me a lot of Free Guy, and that movie was great. The players trying to get Shank's car get destroyed by the NPCs of the world. Also, it's cool to see how the NPCs even in the internet are self-aware, like the arcade characters. It's very interesting since video games are the new wave, and arcades nowadays aren't as important. Not that they're not cool. I love arcades arcades. Now it's time for Ralph and Vanellope to steal Shank's car though, and they actually trick them into getting the car. And this scene is sick, and a great chase sequence straight out of Fast and Furious. But one thing I kinda dislike about it is the forcing once again. We see that Vanellope can glitch in this game, and she glitches through a fire, but then Vanellope gets cut off by a bus next to the exit, and she just doesn't glitch for some reason. For plot reasons, I guess. Then Ralph explains to Shank how they're trying to fix her game, and gets all vulnerable and starts crying, and they record a video for him to try to help him make money, and they leave to go to BuzzTube. Vanellope loved this game though, and we get to see Ralph's insecure side again. Vanellope goes on about how cool Shank is, and Ralph is like,
wait, I'm not cool? What?
and this is one of the things people absolutely hated. People think the way Ralph treats Vanellope in this movie is weird, especially since she's a kid. He is absolutely obsessed with her, and doesn't even let her have friends. I'll go more into this later, but anyways, they go to BuzzTube, and Ralph is going viral, and starts making videos to make money, and so that's what he does for a while. And we just watch a montage of people loving his videos, and him just making content, and honestly, I kinda enjoyed this part, and thought it was funny and relatable as YouTube is so popular. I mean, you are watching this on YouTube right now, but for a movie based off video games, I could definitely see why fans would hate this. The first movie is primarily focused on nostalgia and just arcade games, and this BuzzTube sequence is practically one of the most important parts of the movie, and the way Ralph makes all of his money. It's like they completely ditched the video game aspect of his movie. Also, we watch as Ralph starts trying to control Vanellope, not letting her leave alone to be a spammer, which is kinda weird, but I really like this part of Vanellope going to Oh My Disney. And sadly, this and Slaughter Race were the only two parts that kinda stayed true to the video game aspect of the movie. We see so much references here, and it's so much fun. The Disney World is awesome. The princess part was also so much fun, and we get to see every single princess from every movie, and there are many jokes in this scene. One that really stands out is where they explain how dark and messed up every princess's life is. Anyways, back to BuzzTube, where Ralph ends up accidentally reading hate comments. I kinda like this scene, and it gives great advice for up and coming content creators, and is extremely relatable, but I don't know if it fits Wreck-It Ralph that well, but I guess it adds more to how insecure he is. But Ralph gets 30 grand for making videos, and everything seems great, until Vanellope has a realization that she's not like her original game, and actually really likes Slaughter Race, and wants to be in that game instead. Ralph accidentally calls her while waiting at eBay, and here is where Ralph shows just how awful he can be. He gets super jealous and upset that she's in the Slaughter Race game, and thinks back to how Vanellope didn't like Tron because of the virus. So he literally puts a virus into the Slaughter Race game to scare Vanellope out, which by the way, could literally kill her, because they have to reboot the game because of the virus, and anything that's not in the code of the game can literally die. But anyways, she does get out in time, and Ralph is like, my bad, I expect that to happen, and now she knows that that was all his doing, and she's real mad at him. And while Ralph is sitting there sulking, all sad and depressed, the virus makes it out of the Slaughter Race game, and scans Ralph and makes an insecure virus of him. Now people absolutely hated this. Not only is Ralph the one to blame for the villain of this movie, because he is the cause of the virus getting out, but the villain of his movie is an insecure Big Ralph, which is so lame when comparing it to the original Wreck-It Ralph. Turbo was an amazing villain that created a great conflict, was terrifying, and had a great backstory. And when you compare him to this, it just makes this Ralph villain look like a joke. I mean, the villain is literally just an insecure Ralph. But here's where I really want to focus on the insecurity of Ralph in this movie. Like I said earlier, most people hate this and think Ralph is weird. And I might get hate for this, but I kind of get it. Ralph was alone for 30 years and had no friends. No one liked him. And Vanellope was the first person to be nice to him after 30 years. And I think Ralph wasn't used to these emotions and kind of relied on Vanellope for his happiness. I think he also correlated him being a good guy with Vanellope, since technically Vanellope is what made him into a good guy. So I think in his brain, yes, he's insecure, but he was also terrified of what life looked like without Vanellope, and was scared of going back to that old, sad, depressed version of himself. On the other hand though, it has been 6 years, and what's weird is that Ralph somehow hasn't made a single other friend in that time span. I mean, in Wreck-It Ralph, Felix and Ralph got kind of close. So what, does he just ignore him? Or is Felix all up on Calhoun like that? I don't know. While I do think it makes sense why Ralph is insecure, I think making that the main conflict and build up for this movie was kind of silly and unnecessary. I feel like there could have been more lore in that 6-year period, but I guess nothing happened at all. They just rotted and drank root beer, I guess. Anyways, Ralph beats the insecure monster by now finally realizing he needs to let Vanellope go because he loves her. And I won't lie, it is a cute scene, and the movie ends with Ralph actually becoming pretty happy in this arcade and making friends and going to a book club, which are things he could have done before. Anyways, this movie, while I was just being so harsh on it, was genuinely a fun movie. I'm not gonna lie, I enjoyed it, but in a big but, it just can't compare to Wreck-It Ralph. I feel like a lot of people went to this movie expecting a movie as good as Wreck-It Ralph or better, and it just wasn't that. I think if this movie was made without Wreck-It Ralph being a thing, it would have been a hit. It's a fun movie, has great references, has a very creative world of the internet, but it just lacks at a genuine conflict and lore. I mean, they are literally just trying to fix Sugar Rush again and trying to make Vanellope happy again. It's practically the same plot. I mean, I guess it's a nice little farewell to Vanellope, but it just felt pointless. In the first movie, why did we go through all of that? Ralph destroying King Candy, who by the way had everyone but Sour Bill happy, just for Vanellope to dip on that game. It just makes the first movie irrelevant, and I can see why people hate that. Also, the villain in this movie was just lame. I feel an actual virus would have been more interesting, but an insecure Ralph virus, really? Also, not to mention, but I feel every conflict in this movie was just made from poor choices of Ralph and Vanellope instead of real conflicts that were unprovoked preventable. I also think, while the internet was insanely entertaining, they really missed the point of Wreck-It Ralph, a movie based off video game characters. The fact they focused more on BuzzTube than other video games seemed like a missed opportunity. They pretty much only had one game in this entire film. While this movie wasn't as good as Wreck-It Ralph, I would still say it's an enjoyable movie, but it's just not that great. And I hate to say it, but I can understand the hate now when being really picky. I don't know. I mean, I'm just giving my opinion. That's about it. It's a good movie, but it has some flaws. That's about it. It's not the best. I don't know. I'm sorry.